Yeah.
You read John,
John 3:25.
see the Christmas coming, but I don't see Jim and Carol.
Yeah. They were here Sunday.
Yeah.
Yep.
All wood. So you like
Won't be anything next week, right?
Nothing. Nope.
Well, Sunday's gonna be a short.
Yeah. Yep. Typically is.
Oh, okay. Well, it's kind of funny. I don't hope it's one. And you look at one end, and then you can turn the whole 180 degrees. Yeah, it's a whole other view. So we're talking people because it's not like people say most of the time.
And I can really separate and kind of make it cool. That wooden things they put out on the seat. Most of the time.
Oh, really?
It's easy with big pedals, throw here and.
Really? Oh, that's fun. No, that's funny. That's funny. When I see it, because they
Here, and the next two things.
that, and then have maybe a back. I'm like, got some other way to chair. But we chat. So, yeah, I think that's good. Right.
In her seat.
Right. Oh, that's funny.
She got married.
Yeah.
She didn't know how to drive a car.
Right.
She had to get on the
Oh, no.
I think you were about it.
I would say so. I would say so.
One of those sections dropped down.
That's awful.
You go down from small to this
Yes.
Actually, I'm not too bad. I don't have
I
any
think she
trouble.
was in her nineties, about those times, maybe nineties.
No, I'm good.
When she had kids were little.
Right.
Everything was like having dinner and carrying stuff. Here, let me take that from you, Linda, here. Oh, I can get it. Oh, I can get it.
I understand.
They're Cheetos.
Oh, I had medicine before we started, I had more than I had good shots to run out of medicine. Or have to go take-
I'm doing
Yes, I
okay.
know.
It's just like some roads, like we're down there and.
She said,
That's right.
It's such a cool Saturday. But like these drops. You got your car.
I can't remember. It's fine.
well, we did.
Your innocent God. How to fix things and.
Oh, yeah. That's his cow, the cannabis there.
I'm back.
I got a one.
I can.
That'd be the worst way to die every time. Brutal too. Yeah, that'd be fun. You kind of, I started kind of laughing, because running at you.
And then.
Oh, good.
Oh.
I helped out at,
Boy, you're excited.
well, I actually was like sure as a high school. Yeah, right. Well, participate, yeah, help for volunteers, yeah, so I like that part. Right. Actually, and yeah, chapel.
You ever cooked up?
Centers and dorms.
My dad's there.
They used to.
When I was a kid, those were the.
Bugs and animals with fangs. But not that. I've never had turtles.
They say that there's different parts, you know,
Right.
but it says different parts.
So I hear it's the
The chicken part.
Yesterday, we had some,
Yeah, we start listening soon. We're talking about guns, remember?
Oh, okay, yeah. I figured,
What is she there, Josh?
Shoot a bear.
Yes. Shoot a bear or go tornado.
Hey, don't put those
Choose.
back.
Both.
He said, no.
Sounds horrible. What kind of a choice was that? The best one. Says the guy who doesn't have to answer to children or wife. Yeah, your perspective changes once that happens. Like that's John. Yeah. No, you can sit there. He's sitting back there. Just throw his hat at him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We'll let it fly.
Josh, we should be good on credit cards. We're gonna be, they've updated it since the guys were asking for my so we all have a limit.
Yeah, I mean, if you got a dually truck, you could probably hit
Exactly.
it. Yeah.
There's videos of people doing it, cash registers like, why you already paid?
Yeah.
I'm gonna get another one after this.
Yeah. Kara went and filled up one of the CNR trucks one time, and she ran out of $1,000.
Wow.
Girl. She's got her CDL, you know, so.
You stay out of the.
Alrighty. Hello. Glad to see everybody here. Glad to see everybody talking, having a good time. I almost don't want to interrupt it. So I'm not a stickler for time. Virgil is, but if Jim Franklin was here, he'd make me start on time, but he's not here, so I'm not going to start on time.
We're already too late to start on time.
Yeah, it's fine. Well, last week we didn't start till 1:30, so that was
Last week we were at Appalachian.
2 weeks ago. Yeah, so we've had an average of 15 minutes of Bible study over 2 weeks. All right, we're staying till 3. Never mind. Okay. If you got your Bibles, John chapter 3, we are going to be starting in verse 22. And we're going to be looking at 2 short stories, both of whom I have found in ministry and in life have led to vicious bouts of jealousy. There's a Bible verse in Proverbs chapter 27 that says, anger is bad and wrath is furious, but who can stand before jealousy? So before we dive in, why do you think jealousy is so damaging? What about it is so terrible?
Mean. They're mean.
What'd you say, Dennis?
It just keeps working on you.
Okay, it kind of eats at you. Yeah, all right, what else?
Well, I think that anger where we shoot is out toward someone else, but jealousy is something that's digging at us.
Yeah, that's kind of what Dennis said. Yeah, good point. What else? Sorry, Linda.
Well, that's more or less what I was going to say.
Okay.
But your jealousy will affect the other person if you
Yes.
let it.
Oh, yeah. So, go ahead.
I go to sports. I think there's always someone going to be bigger, stronger than you.
Yes.
And so jealousy, it's just a never-ending thing.
Yes. And it's a personal choice because we all feel the feeling of jealousy. You know, it's a matter of how you manage it. You know, what do you do with that feeling?
Because some people, they might harm another person.
Oh, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of what you, like one thing that opened my eyes with Kara being in law enforcement as long as she was, is that a lot of your murders are jealousy oriented. That's where it started. Somebody's jealous of somebody else's position, or they stole their wife or girlfriend, or, you know, you just name your jealous object, and it's what results in extreme violence. And we have a culture right now that's obsessed with jealousy. You know, we have people who think that they should own what other people own and have what other people have, and it should just be given to them. And I'm not making a political statement when I say that. There's just an entitlement mentality in general that people think they're owed something. And that's not healthy. Now, you can say something's unjust, and that's different. But when you just say, I'm owed it, that is damaging.
Don't you think that comes from childhood,
Sure.
from
Yeah.
kids? Kids thinking, well, my folks give me that,
Yes, I should always have
Let me
it.
have whatever I want, so.
Right. Yeah, that can definitely happen. Yeah, so all these things are true. Now, you're going to think this is a strange topic to bring up with the verse we're about to read, but I'm going to explain it, okay? So, John chapter 3, and let's read 22 through 24.
After these things, Jesus and his disciples came to the land of Judea, and there he was spending time with them and baptizing. John also was baptizing in Aenon, near Salem, because there was much water there, and people were coming and were being baptized. For John had not yet been thrown into prison.
Okay, thank you, Alex. Now you're thinking, Josh, what does this have to do with jealousy? I have seen, and there's Bible stories to confirm this, people being jealous who baptized who. Yeah, I'm seeing some nods. Now, to some of you, never even thought of that before. Like, why would that matter? But it's a very real thing. In fact, skip over to just one chapter later, John chapter 4, and go to verse 2. And somebody read that.
We're not in,
We're in the Gospel of John,
okay,
not 1 John.
okay.
Yeah. So somebody read John chapter 4, verse 2.
Although Jesus himself was not baptizing, but his disciples were.
Okay. So Jesus was not baptizing, but his disciples were. Why do you think Jesus wouldn't have baptized somebody?
So they wouldn't take it as a prestige thing, they were better than you because you didn't have to.
Right. Aren't people like that? In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, Paul tells the Corinthian church, I'm not baptizing people anymore because people think it's important that I baptize them, and it's not. It doesn't matter who baptizes you. It's a matter of where your heart is and what you understand about baptism when you go get baptized. It doesn't matter who baptizes you. Now, if you want a particular person to baptize you and they're willing, that's fine. Like, I don't care who does it. But it's not important who does it. And Jesus recognized that from the beginning. He's not doing it. Because you could just imagine that being a bragging point, you know, for the rest of eternity. I was baptized by Jesus, you know. And then still end up in hell. So, what's that?
He wouldn't be able to keep it.
Right.
Everybody be like.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Would you join the line to be baptized by Jesus? Or would you join the line to be baptized by Peter? I mean, everybody would get in the line for Jesus, you know. So he just took it off the plate. And that's smart. Just shows the wisdom of God from the beginning. And Paul withdrawing that for the same reason is smart. Now, I'm nobody famous, so I don't think it makes any difference if I baptize or not. But go ahead, Linda.
But a lot of used to, I don't know, still do or not, evangelists at a revival, they won't, the speaker won't do the.
Sure,
Nowadays, it's a lot more people.
I could see that. I think of his first name. The Duck Commander people, Phil Robertson. Yeah, I don't know why my mind just left my brain there. Phil Robertson doesn't do baptisms anymore because of his fame. You know, people were coming to his church just to be baptized by him, not for any other reason. So he stopped.
Yeah.
And again, this may seem alien to some of us who never thought of this before, but it's a biblical thing. And jealousy is so dangerous that God does what he can to try to keep it at bay. Now, there's another piece of jealousy we're about to read here that doesn't happen because John decides to not let it happen. In Sunday school, if you were here Sunday morning, I talked about how preachers can become jealous of each other. Leaders can become jealous of each other. Do we see politicians becoming jealous of each other? Right. So jealousy is not above any of us. Any of us can get this brainworm that ruins us and other people around us. There's only one story in all of Scripture, and it's in the book of Numbers. One person that I know of in all of history who acted on jealousy properly, and his name was Phinehas. And God said that he acted properly in his jealousy. And that's the only person in all of history that I know of who's acted on jealousy properly.
What was his
How do you
story?
do it properly?
It's a violent story. Don't know if I quite want to tell it, but thanks, Alex. I thought I'd just leave it there. Don't have to go into detail.
No. I'll look it up. How about that?
I try to keep it PG. Basically, people were worshiping idols and committing acts of idolatry and sexual immorality, and they were doing it in front of the temple openly, like they weren't even hiding their sin anymore. And nobody was listening to Moses, and Moses was getting desperate because Moses was afraid God was just going to wipe them all out. So Phinehas took a spear and ran through two of them fornicating right in front of the temple, and just shouted for everybody to stop, or he's going to keep spearing people through. And God's like, because those two died, the rest of you won't. Crazy, huh? Yeah. And the early Israelites were profoundly disobedient. And that's, I know as a parent, I've learned with age, I save wrath for last. I try to reason and rhyme my way around everything possible. Never had to get mad at that one. And I don't think you'll ever give me a reason. So now he has made me worry many times. I mean, he's made me worry. I've seen him on top of a 100,000-foot ladder with like no ropes or anything, and I'm like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm fine." I'm like, yeah. So, yeah.
Jumping down the ladder.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway. But you should go to wrath last, and God does too. If you read the book of Numbers objectively, you actually go through the whole thing and read it in context over and over again. He's pleading with the people. I want to make your lives good. You're the ones who keep making it difficult. And isn't that what parents say to kids all the time? We want this to be good. You're making it difficult. And then when they don't finally get the message, sometimes the hammer has to come down. And that's what happened there. So there's your story, Alex.
Thanks, John.
I'm glad you asked questions in class.
I'm a good student.
Shouldn't lie in church, Alex. Okay. All right. So-
Alex, you'll get payback.
All right.
Oh, I know. I gotta spend all week with him next week. He's gonna let me hear it.
Okay. John chapter 3, let's read starting in verse, let's do 26 through 28.
Came to John and said to him, Rabbi, he who was with you beyond the Jordan, to whom you have testified, behold, he is baptizing, and all are coming to him. John answered and said, a man can receive nothing unless it has been given him from heaven. You yourselves are my witnesses that I say.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. You can make the argument that John the Baptist, in terms of numbers, was more successful than Jesus at the peak of his ministry. In 6 months' time, John the Baptist had built a ministry so successful that it says all of Judea came out to be baptized by John. I mean, he had a mega church in 6 months. And when you have that kind of popularity and success, what is the temptation? Yeah, it's all because of me. To capitalize on it, to start making money off of it.
Yeah.
I mean, really, and that's what a lot of, unfortunately, famous preachers end up doing. One of the things that irks me is like when somebody gets a study Bible and a man's name is on it. It's like, so, whatever's name, study Bible. I'm like, it's not about you. Like, I didn't get a Bible so I could, think well of you. I wouldn't mind if it said, Holy Bible, notes by whoever. That's fine. But to put your name in front of the Bible just seems very preposterous to me. It's sort of a pet peeve of mine. But John here, notice that the disciples came to John and said, this other man, he's baptizing. Like, he's taking your spotlight. People are going to him. And John, throughout this whole passage, is going to say, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. I'm supposed to decrease. He's supposed to increase. John was never self-promoting. What was some other strange things about John you can remember?
His clothing.
Clothing, yep, camel's hair, leather belt around his waist, his diet, locust and wild honey. Yeah, the only vegetarian in scripture that I know of, other than Adam and Eve. What's that?
Lived alone in the wilderness.
Lived alone in the wilderness? Yeah. Doesn't sound like a private jet to me. Doesn't sound like a $10 million house in Lakewood, or Texas. Doesn't sound like any of that. John was willingly giving up his ministry to Jesus and saying, this is what was supposed to happen. How many people are good at passing the baton even now? And I'm not talking about just church. Talk about business, talk about civic clubs, anything. There's always this, not always, but there's oftentimes this resistance to pass the baton off to the next generation. And I understand the difficulty. Because at 40 years old now, sometimes I look at the younger generation, present company excused, and I think, there's no hope. But they thought the same thing about us, okay? Every generation does. And at some point in time, everybody has to let go and let God and just be like, the kids will be all right. Here's the baton. It's not mine anymore. And that's really hard. I get that. But John here, who's in the peak of his ministry, he's not an old man. Everything's going his way, and he still recognizes this is the right time to let go. The amount of personal and spiritual maturity it takes to do that is just borderline unheard of. That's incredible. One thing I've told my kids growing up is, all you owe me is your own success. I want you to succeed me. I want you to do better than me. The good news is everybody's already agreeing to that. So that's good. John is not interested in his own promotion. And that's just really amazing. I also like the fact that John is so famous and you don't see him referring to himself as Reverend Doctor. That's another pet peeve of mine with preachers. They want to have all these titles before and after their name, which is one of the things that drove me to just be Josh. That's what I am. Just call me Josh. I don't want any titles in front of or behind my name. I know preachers in this county that require people call him pastor, or the Catholic priest, father, which I've always thought.
Not my father.
Right. There's even a Bible verse that says, call no man father, and here we go, in the church.
I bet a guy I've known for like 5-6 years, and come find out he has a doctorate's degree. He's a preacher. Didn't know.
Yep.
Never referred to it.
Yep.
That's great. I complimented him on
It's one of my goals over time to get my doctorate in theology or whatever and tell absolutely nobody. I want it to be a secret between me and God.
There you go.
I want to be in that exclusive club in heaven that, my left hand did not know what my right hand was doing. Nobody was ever impressed by my credentials because they don't matter. That's the crazy part. I went to a symphony this past December. It's a classical music. It's about the only music I really love because I grew up with it. And Kara and I went to a symphony in St. Joe, and there was a conductor who was really good. And I don't mean just conducting music. He was funny. He talked about the music, and he had self-deprecating humor. People who can make fun of themselves are usually the best kinds of people. We need more politicians like that. Yes, have a sense of humor. Realize you're human, And anyway, this director of music said, I know in the bulletin of the program that it says that I have my doctorate degree, but I want to tell you something right now. Having a doctorate in music doesn't matter. And I thought, whoever you are, I love you. That's a person I want to get to know, somebody I can trust, because they're not putting themselves above other people. In my opinion, the only time you should wear doctor is if you're a medical doctor. We need to know that, because, we might need you. But on the airplane, if you need a doctor and you say, well, I have a doctor of music, everybody's going to hit you, as they should. If I say, I have a doctor of theology, they're going to throw me out the plane, okay? That's so dumb. It makes no sense. So anyway, that's what John's doing here. So let's see what else John has to say. Let's read verses 29 and 30.
He who has the bride is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom, who stands and hears him, rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. So this joy is mine and has been made full. He must increase, and I must decrease.
Okay. Thank you, Connie. Keep in mind who John is talking to. He's talking to the people who chose to follow him. He's talking to his closest disciples and saying, thanks for being here, go that way. And we know from the book of Acts that they did. They started to move towards Jesus. And some of them were late to the party, but they showed up. And they came to realize that this is who we are really here for. And that just, John's short ministry is just, it's underrated. It's an incredible ministry. It's an incredible person. I mean, his mega church size ministry ends up with him in jail being beheaded. And he accepted that. I mean, every time I read about John the Baptist and the more I get to know him, I just think, man, got to be a preacher more like him. Got to be like Jesus. Want to, point that direction. That's what John would do. But boy, you can still learn a whole lot from John in just a little time he has to say. And that verse 30 is real easy to memorize. He must increase, but I must decrease. That's a good motto for life, isn't it? That's hard to do. We all experience jealousy and we all experience selfishness, especially on the mountain next week. Going to be fighting the urge to murmur.
I've got a little something to say.
Go ahead, Karen.
Aphia was making these little key bobs like I gave your wife, and for 4-H, the show. So I worked with her for a while. Pretty soon I thought, well, she was setting up the machine good, and doing all this, so I just left it. I let her go,
Yeah.
But I mean, you have to do that.
Yep. It's got
Certain times,
Never forget the time. I'm going to tell a story on Jonathan. This was 5 years ago about this time. Jonathan and I were at home building the awning on the back of our house to shed some water away from the new addition. And I was trying to cut these boards at an angle, and I kept doing it wrong. And I said, Jonathan, you want to try? He was 11 at the time. And I didn't have any faith he could do it either. He started cutting them right every time. And that's what the boards that are up there. And, so yeah, there you go. Been a better carpenter than me since age 11. So probably since age 2, and we just didn't know. But, yeah, I always told Jonathan, we could start a construction company called Mediocre Construction, because that's what I can do. So, yep, but no discounts. All right, let's keep reading. 31 and 32.
He who comes from above is above all, and he who is of the earth speaks of the earth. He who comes from heaven is above all. Testifies, and no one receives his testimony.
Okay, thank you, Virgil. John is passing the baton on to whom he knows is greater than him in all things. Now, as human beings, we don't have quite that advantage in terms of when we have to pass the baton to somebody else, they have their own strengths and weaknesses. But John recognized from the beginning, Jesus has no weaknesses. I'm passing the baton on to the person who's going to take this all the way. If John went to the cross, as good as a man as he was, it wouldn't have made any difference. It had to be Jesus. And I've learned that to be true too. There's some things that others can do better than me, and it is better to let them do it. Get out of the way. They're better at it than I am. They can reach an audience I can't. They can go places I can't go. And yet what's fun about it sometimes is that I get to be a part of training that person or be a part of their support, but I can't do it myself. I have to send them. They have to do that. And I'm totally comfortable with that. I learned a long time ago that I've got my weaknesses. They're very hard for me to shore up. I'm much better off delegating those kinds of things. For example, one thing this church is going to be in culture shock with here real shortly when Alex leaves is you're going to realize just how disorganized I am, because Alex has shored that up for me a lot. And let's hope the next guy we get is organized. So if the bulletin's backwards and upside down and in Greek, I tried. Okay, that's all I can say. So, all right. Any thoughts before we continue? Thoughts, questions, comments?
The story I think of is David and Saul whenever they're coming
Yeah.
back and they're saying Saul slays his thousands, David 10,000s, and that's just the start of what Saul really started hating David.
And Saul started out as a good king, appointed by God, and he literally let jealousy drive him to his grave. And the whole time he was jealous, he was miserable. I mean, they were saying Saul slayed his thousands. I mean, if somebody said Josh is a good preacher, but Jonathan's greater, I'm like, wow, that's great. I'll take that any day, you know? And that's what's so sad about that story, is that it could have been pleasant for both of them. Saul could have served his 40 years and passed the baton and watched David do greater things and enjoyed the whole process. You know, I hope the guy that comes after me, whenever that day comes, is better than I am. That would be a good thing. It blows my mind that anybody, but there's plenty of preachers who do, who want the next guy to be worse so that his old friends will call him back and say, boy, we miss you. You know? Like when I left the computer world, people would be like, boy, we miss you. I'm like, well, I'm grateful, but I also wish there was somebody else. You know? Yeah.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
On 33,
Mm-hmm.
no, it's 32.
Okay.
At the end, it says, no one receives his testimony.
Let's keep reading. It'll answer your question.
Okay.
Yep. Let's do 33 through 36.
He who has received his testimony is certified that God is true. For whom God has sent speaks the word of God, for God does not give the Spirit by measure. The Father loves the Son and has given all things into his. He who believes in the Son has everlasting life, and he who does not believe the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abides on him.
Okay. Thank you, Shirley. So it helps answer that. Because in the beginning, people were hesitant to receive Jesus' testimony. And that's because Jesus was saying outlandish things. He was making claims that nobody else had ever made. I mean, when you say you are the Son of God and you are the Christ, who's going to be skeptical of that?
Everybody.
Just about everybody. Right. You got to prove it. And even if you prove it, are people still going to reject you? Yeah, because Jesus proved it. You know, he had the signs and the wonders and the miracles. He spoke with authority. He answered every question ever thrown at him. So much so, the Pharisees eventually gave up asking him questions because it was backfiring on them. He died and rose again. I mean, what more can you do to demonstrate it? And yet, plenty of people rejected him then, and plenty of people reject him now.
Do you think then a lot of people rejected him because he wasn't what they expected? They expected a conquering king coming in
And I think it goes as, and I think it comes a step further than that. Not only was he not what they were expecting, they weren't what they wanted. Like, one thing I constantly work with young people about is the reason why you believe something is true is usually because you want it to be true. That's usually the issue. For example, the first time you fall in love, you think that other person is perfect. And yet, at the nursing home last week, I got to do a baptism at the nursing home last week. That was fun. But at the nursing home last week, Linda and I were doing our singing and preaching. And there's a couple there. Oh, yeah. You all will know them, or at least some of you will. Gail, Hayes,
Yes.
and Arlene. Yeah. They celebrated their 70th wedding anniversary at the nursing home last week. Yeah. They're both 90-something. And okay, so I noticed this. Linda was singing a song, and they were separated a little bit, and they're both in wheelchairs, and he starts to slowly wheel over to her so he can hold her hand. Right. Now, I want you to think about something. That young couple who's madly in love and who think that they're each other are perfect, which one has more love? Them or Gail and Arlene Hayes? Gail and Arlene by a mile and a half. Yeah, it's not even in the same ballpark. You know, that's love. You know, and the whole goal, of course, is to get that young couple to that point, but it's a lifelong journey. And I that was just an absolutely beautiful thing to see. So,
They were super people.
yep, still are. Both can still hold a conversation. They had anniversary cake and had a good time.
Is Gail completely blind now or not?
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. I could kind of tell he was struggling.
Murdered cousin.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Okay. Yep. The roots go deep. All right. Well, good conversation so far. Questions or comments, thoughts, rabbit holes? We haven't gone to the moon landing yet. Thanks to Alex.
I didn't start that.
Oh, I'm sure you did. I'm
I
sure you
encouraged
did.
it.
I'm sure you did.
It's still fake.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Uh,
The flag blow up.
what's that?
How did the flag wave up there when there was no?
Here we go. We're not going there. Okay. All right.
Why'd you say that?
We're not going there. If you want a month and a half left, be quiet. Okay. All right. Very good. It totally threw me off. All right. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. All right. Now, this next story is one that's very familiar to all of you. It's the woman at the well. And we're moving on from the topic of jealousy to the topic of hopelessness. Now, is there hopelessness in this world right now? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's everywhere. And I mean everywhere. It's global. It's everywhere. I don't know if you saw the news, but like there's been a whole coup in Sri Lanka. Like they've chased out the government and the president, and it's bad. They don't have any food. They don't have any gas. It's bad over there. And other places, I mean, it's going to be a domino effect. And so when there's hopelessness, people tend to get desperate, and they do things that they wouldn't otherwise normally do. And I think this woman at the well is one of those examples. She had lost faith. She had become hopeless a long time ago, and she kept running from man to man to man. Do we still see people do that today, run from one person to another, looking to fulfill themselves? And if anybody in here who's been married for any period of time knows, another person can't fulfill you. They can contribute to you. They can increase your happiness. They can also decrease your happiness, but they can't complete you. You have to be content on your own with the Lord. You have to be. And that's something I try to really emphasize with young people. If you think another person's going to fulfill you, no, that's not the way this works. You have to be content with yourself and God. In fact, if you find two people who are content with themselves and God, they tend to make really good married couples. But codependency is not the answer. So let's start reading. Let's do John chapter 4, verses 1 through 5.
The Pharisees heard that Jesus was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. When the Lord learned of this, he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria, so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph.
One more.
Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about the 6th hour.
Okay. You can imagine the Pharisees. They get the word that John's so successful in taking the attention away from them, and now Jesus is so successful in taking attention away from them. They're like, no, they're doubling. They're reproducing, And yet, did the Pharisees have a jealousy problem? Oh, yeah. Karen, don't lie in church. The Pharisees had a terrible jealousy problem. When you have power and you have money and you have influence, it is extraordinarily difficult to let that go. Extraordinarily difficult. I mean, for anybody. I've had preacher friends make mistakes in ministry because they were afraid of losing their job, so they compromised on their values, or they let abuse happen. And you can't go there. You've got to, what Jesus says, if you try to keep your life, you will lose it, but if you lose your life for my sake, you will find it. I've learned that's what that is. You cannot compromise on the essentials. You cannot compromise on what the Bible talks about. If you do, then you will lose your life. You will lose what's most precious to you. And here, the Pharisees did exactly that. But Jesus moves on, and he has to go to Samaria. Now, this is a little hard in modern 21st century America to understand, but in that time period, and we've had it in our culture and country and all throughout the world, it's always been a problem, The Jews hated the Samaritans hated the Jews, and the only reason why is because they were Samaritans and they were Jews. Their hatred had gone back for so long, it was rooted so deep. Now, one thing you might relate to is I've met families in this area who hate each other and nobody can tell me why. Because the conflict was their grandparents, not theirs, and they can't remember what it was about. They don't even care what it was about, but boy, those people are terrible, those people are terrible. And let me tell you, if you have not been raised in a large city, I'm not sure you really know who terrible people are. And I'm not trying to insult anyone, but my idea of a terrible person is not somebody I disagree with. My idea of a terrible person is somebody who tries to kill you or murder you or, do terrible things to you. My parents had bullet holes in their house. I mean, this was life in a larger city, and we did not live in a bad neighborhood. You just, you were not out after dark. You heard popping sounds. You got down. You got out. You just knew this was life in the city.
Even in those larger cities, like, they have a lot of the same hatred that goes back before they were born. I knew several people, that were in gangs because they had to be or whatever, like they worked, downtown. And a lot of those gangs didn't get along because of things that happened 3-4 generations ago.
Yeah.
But no matter what, they were
Didn't matter.
each other if they saw each other.
Yeah, just
They didn't know why.
just rooted hatred. Yeah. And so when I move here and I see people like hating on one another because they disagree on politics or because their grandfather did something to their other grandfather, I'm like, I almost feel like I need to come to your house, bust the windows out of your house, set half your house on fire, do something so you really know what evil is. Because disagreeing with somebody is not evil. You might think they're very wrong, but I have just seen people just tear each other up and down, gossip, just horrible stuff. That's like the only downside to rural America is that people tend to make mountains out of molehills. Because I've never seen real evil in this community. I've seen dumb, I've seen sin, I've seen wrong, but I've never seen the kind of things I saw growing up. There's been 2 murders in this county in 40 years. That's like in Chicago, that's what happens every 30 minutes.
500 a year.
Yeah, 500 a year. It's absurd.
Part of our nature to hate.
Yep.
And we want to, if there's somebody, we have us and them, and whether, they're big people, there are people out there with guns trying to shoot each other, or whether they're just neighbors gossiping about each other.
Yep.
There have to be the people that you like and the people that you hate.
Yep, I really do. I think that's sin. I think that's part of living in a sinful world and giving into it is this desire to have somebody to be unhappy with or unhappy about. And I see it in families, and it's just so sad. I'm not really sure what to do about it on a community level. I just try to discourage it, every step I get. Any thoughts? Sorry, did I miss you? Donna, were you saying something? No? Okay. Yeah, I think that's very true. And so we as Christians really have to stand up against that and not allow those kinds of silly biases to take place. There's no good in that.
A lot of that hate doesn't originate, in a lot of cases, not all of them, but jealousy.
Yep.
That's where it starts.
Yep. Oh, one place I've really seen it around here is sports. Kids competing in sports. I mean, families who rip each other apart. I'll never forget the time I was running track. I was actually competitive in junior high track. I won second in state my 8th grade year. And I remember being at a track meet. It was a qualifying track meet. It was a regional track meet. And I ran the 100-meter dash, and I won. But because visibly, you could see that I crossed the finish line before other people. But my time was behind the second-place guy. And it's because the stopwatch wasn't right. I mean, everybody saw it. And so, the official wasn't sure what to do. And my dad said, give it to the second-place winner. And he pulled me aside and he said, I know you won that race, but I want you to learn something from this. I want you to learn that winning is not the most important thing. And I am not going to throw a fit over this. And that was that. I never forgot that. Winning isn't everything. And winning an 8th grade track meet is not important.
Just in our little school here.
Yeah, it can happen.
It was horrible.
Yeah. And I refuse. Like, I enjoy sports until people take it seriously. And I'm like, we are getting upset over a ball game. This is what I expect preschoolers to do. You know? Nobody elbow anybody else. That's not nice. And my dad, he got a lot better about that with age. I remember he would just ruin our whole day by being upset about a Cubs game. I'm like, if you're a Cubs fan from the 80s and 90s, you're asking for it. I mean, yeah, it's just. And then finally, I remember one day he was in church and he realized he was thinking about the Cubs game instead of church. And he realized, I'm done with the Cubs. I'm done with baseball. I'm not watching it anymore. Because he finally realized the damage it was doing to him and the family.
Get so wound up in it.
Yeah, and then they finally win the World Series a few years ago, and I called Dad and I said, "Hey, they won." He's like, "I haven't cared for years, son."
I don't think, because you went to a larger school, I don't think you know how important football is into some of these tiny towns.
Well, they are.
I mean, it's like it's life. You know,
I get
South,
that.
South, there was nothing. You literally get out of class.
And that's an idol. I mean, at that point, it becomes an idol. You know, was that important? When it's all encompassing, when your whole personal self-worth and value is in a game. I don't see the difference between football and a video game. I don't. It's a game. Why are we taking it seriously? Like, I have a rule at my house. You want to play games? Play games. You cannot get upset if you win or lose. That is an absolute rule. We don't do that. We don't throw fits. In fact, I tell Luke, if you lose a Monopoly, I'm not playing with you the next day.
Imagine you talking about football coach about saying that to him.
I don't care. I don't care at all. Because I know what's important. This is important.
It's just crazy how important
It is. It's nuts. Yeah.
But what I think is awful, and I'm sports of any kind, but is what I see of ball games and in news and things, but when parents are down there fighting over their kids, they should be down there backing them up and just let them face the facts. Now, you've got to learn. That's the thing. Learn.
Yep.
Some things you're going to win and some you're going to lose. That's just part of life.
It's part of life. It's healthy. It's normal. It's good. I mean, I'm all for games if we can all be adults. But boy, but there's plenty of adults who can't be adults. And I refuse to take it seriously. And that my dad taught me that day. He's like, I'm not going to throw a fit over an 8th grade race. Now, it was important to me, I remember. But when he told me he wasn't going to fight for it, I realized that the power was out of my hands and it was better to just accept it. And it was a huge growing up moment for me. He could have fought it and probably won it, but what he would have taught me is that mattered. And it didn't matter. We were there for fun. And that's what he told me. I want you to try your best, but we're here for fun.
Well, and I think that's really an incredible opportunity for parents, because that is where they can teach their children sportsmanship. They can teach them how to have a Christian attitude toward what they're doing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of responsibility for parents, and that's why I hate to see the parents that just get angry and cuss at each other, because that's not. They have the opportunity to really teach their kids something important.
It's actually why I didn't encourage my kids to get into sports. I mean, I don't have anything against parents who do. That's your business, and that's fine. But it's because I knew the day would come when their coach would take it too seriously, and I'd have to go up to him and say, my kid's not doing this anymore because you think this is important. And it's not.
Just out of curiosity, the other kid that ended up winning, do you know how he turned out?
No.
Okay. I mean, the right thing for his dad to have done was, if y'all start the race at the same time and you cross the finish line first, it's like you say, it's pretty obvious. So, but I bet you he just grabbed it and said, "Oh, okay, we got
And my dad just decided, no, we're not. It's a game.
It would have been nice if.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. But I also remember him telling me it doesn't matter what the other person thinks. We're here for fun. You enjoyed it. That's what matters. Yeah, and I ended up winning second in, that was in 7th grade. I remember I got second in state in 8th grade. And I enjoyed it because the pressure was off. Like I have learned that about myself. If I'm stressed out, that's when I do poorly. But if I'm enjoying it, I can give it my best. If I'm less, like in the pulpit, if I'm stressed, I'm not going to preach nearly as well. It's when I'm excited about what I'm preaching about, I'm enthused about it, that's when it comes out the best. And people can see that. They can see if you're stressed. They can see if I'm stressed. They can also see if I'm enjoying myself, if I really believe in what I'm saying. That makes such a huge difference. Yeah, good discussion. Good thoughts. Thanks, Dennis. Anybody else before we continue? I'm almost afraid to go into the next section because we just don't have enough time. Because the woman at the well story is worth more than a few minutes. We can end a few minutes early. Anybody opposed to that? Everybody cool with that? All right, well, I think that's where we'll stop. I don't want to dive into that yet, so we'll come back. Now, next week, are you all going to eat out, or are you just going to cancel, or do we want to make up a plan right now? Because Alex and I aren't going to be here. We're going to be at NYR.
We could go out and eat.
You want to eat? You want to go out and eat?
You don't wanna go out and eat?
Yeah, 'cause I don't know if your wife told you, I told her I had a bone to pick with you, and she said, you can deal with that with him. She wasn't gonna get into it. I said, wait till I was out of town to go out and eat, you guys, I did the last time, I got to be in the city.
Yeah.
Go out and eat this week.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
All right. Well, I'm going to put Karen in charge of arrangements.
Oh, gosh.
Well, you're the one. You're the one who suggested it. So we have a rule in church leadership: you suggest it, you own it. So yeah. Sorry, Karen.
I'm stressed enough.
Okay, Shirley will help you out. You got a co-chair, and the rest of everybody else is the committee. Okay. All right. That'll be good. I'll be the jester in case I'm still here. Like if I get accidentally sick or something, maybe I can't go. No, I'm gonna go. I've had people ask, and it's a reasonable question, why are both preachers going? Well, this year in particular, it's important because Alex is leaving, and so I want to have a connection with these kids, what experience they have at NYR. So that's the main reason why, is I want to have a connection with these kids. I know a lot of senior ministers don't do that, but to me it's important, and I think it's very healthy. So
Does it help to make connections with other churches for you to, people that you haven't met before there or whatever?
Sure.
I know contacts are important a lot of times.
yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, it's fun. But
We've had ministers before that they got along all right with the older people, the grown-ups, but the kids, they didn't, work real good with. Or the other way around, and
Yeah.
that's not good.
yeah, I tend to be the other way around. I think I'm pretty good with the kids, and you all tolerate me, so thank you.
Oh, that's not true.
I get around kids and I start acting like them, so. All right, it's okay. Yeah.
So there's quarters in the FLC ceiling.
Yeah, actually, for once, I was the mature one in the room, so that was good. Yeah, so that does happen, Virgil, just so you know.
There is quarters.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're just gonna drop it there. Thanks, Dylan, for bringing that up. Jonathan, would you close out for us?
Yeah. Dear Heavenly Father, we want to praise you and thank you for this great day and this group and the good fellowship that we've had today. I just pray that as we all safe and that we have a good rest of the week and that we may continue to all as well. And it's in your Son's name we pray.
Amen. All right, thank you all.